Everybody, it's me again after a billion years of not uploading anything with my voice on it. And guess what? After 9 long months of doing absolutely nothing, I finally put in like an hour of work and compiled all my Family Guy videos into one. Only took me since last Christmas. I think if you've read the title on this one, you basically know the deal. I say yay or nay on cartoon, then I rank cartoon, blah blah blah. I'm not gonna really waste your time with any of that. However, if you're new here, which at my staggering 22 subscribers probably is the case, let me get a few details out of the way, because disclaimers are desperately needed here. So even if these are gonna be long, keep them in mind before you start watching. First of all, this video is a clusterfuck. I know that sounds really harsh and it's not the best thing to say about a video right at the beginning of it, but it really truly is. If you're going in here and expecting some nuanced cartoon analysis, or for fuck's sake, even somebody that knows what they're talking about the slightest, you are in the wrong place. I do not analyze, I do not have a clue what I'm doing, I watch the cartoon and I say if it's good or not. No matter how nonchalantly I throw out business and animation jargon terms in here, I have no clue of any of them. I don't know what an act is. My definition of a plot is thing that like sort of happens in the character with the episodes and like with what they do. And if you asked me to name 3 branches of animation, I'd probably say education, health and government efficiency. My knowledge of cartoons comes from watching Alice Mark. Second, this video served many different purposes at different points in time on progress and working on it. Originally, this was meant to be one large video where I review the entire show. Then I split it up into smaller videos where I review the entire show, but after watching season 4, I realized that just simply wasn't worth it. So now it's one big-ish video where I review like the classic 3 seasons. As a result, this video was very Frankensteined. Intro and outro were recorded months apart from the actual reviews, and each season was meant to be a different episode, which leads to the fact that all of them have very different styles. Season 1 was still largely cut and scripted with the purpose of making this one big complete series video, which leads to it having many remarks about the show as a whole. Season 2 mainly consists of me sawing out random pictures on the wall, recalling the funny facts while not really reviewing anything. It's like seriously, you're gonna see it later on, there's basically no review in there, it's really bad. And season 3 is the only season that actually serves a purpose as, a cartoon review. And also for the stupidest part of this, if the overall ranking list you see at the end seems a bit contradictory to what I said in the video, that's possibly because I lost my fucking rankings. I'm not kidding. I switched PCs in June this year, and while grabbing the important files, I somehow got the scripts for the videos, but not the actual rankings. And trust me, I tried searching everywhere for this. Discord chat logs with bots, random servers, Twitter profile. I wasn't in the mood to redo that shit either. But it was all to no avail. So on October 3rd of 2025, I sat down and recreated my overall ranking list straight off the bat. What even is the story on page 1? What the fuck? Fun fact, last time I watched any of these was in Christmas 2024. This is so fucking shit. So before you head in, don't expect nuanced cartoon analysis. But enough of bashing my own video, and probably losing like 1,000,000,000% of viewer attention by now. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, after 9 months of laziness and procrastination, my imperfect yet biggest project yet, ranking every classic Family Guy episode ever. Starting off with... episode 1 of the entire series, and we're already starting off like really strong. Basically, Peter loses his job at the toy company and applies for welfare, but on accident he receives a $150,000 check a week, and he just blows it all. In my opinion, this episode is really good and also miles better than the stuff I've seen from Modern Family Guy. It's a bit crazy how differently everyone interacted with each other. Nowadays it's just sort of Brian hates Stewie and Stewie hates Brian, but not really, they're like actually good friends. And then Peter does some dumb shit and then Lois is like, Peter, don't do that. And it's like, oh golly gee, and making freeze out, just being ignored entirely. But this feels like way different, they're actually like a sort of normal family. Every member of the family is included somehow as well, and Meg isn't a pointless punching bag. Another thing I really noticed here compared to the later seasons is that there's like a billion pointless characters nobody really asked for. They all pretty much just look the same and seem to be Peter's gals or drinking buddies of some sort, which indicates that Peter's friends were originally not even supposed to be all that present and just throwaways. Overall, I think this is a really great episode, especially for the pilot. So I'm putting it at number 1. Like, I have a choice, but I do think it's a good episode.
Mr. Griffin, I think your words have touched us all. I'm sentencing you to 24 months in prison.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Oh, no!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
Episode 2, and honestly, I think this feels a lot more dumbed down than the last one. In this episode, Peter breaks TV and then something like happens. I don't really know. I don't get the point of the episode. It's just like 3 different plot ideas tied together, with Meg learning how to drive, Peter wrecking TV, and then Peter hating on TV because it's like awesome, but in the end, all is well because it's an episodic show and you gotta get that there somewhere. I do think this episode is a bit boring. It's not really all that funny. The only thing I liked about it is the Stewie trying to kill Broccoli side plot, which ultimately carries this episode to be not completely gruesome. You can tell they were running out of ideas by literal episode 2. And yeah, it's just not my thing. Other people would probably disagree. But I think it's way too loose, honestly. I'm putting it at number 2, and I would rank this episode as gruesome if it wasn't for the Stewie trying to kill Broccoli side plot.
Oh, look at Stewie. Isn't he adorable playing with his Sesame Street phone?
Put me through to the Pentagon. Do you know what sound a cow makes?
Episode 3 is here, and boy, it's good. Basically, Stewie's first birthday party is around the corner and happening very soon. And while Stewie fears of being put back into the womb, Peter accidentally messes the party reservation up and tries to get it fixed. Also, like, Max just joins a suicide cult. I don't know how that happens. Yeah. Anyways, this episode was a bomb. It was full of banger jokes, and even though this might seem pretty shitty of me after complaining that the last episode has 3 plots, this one actually has 3 plots, but I really like it, and I don't think it's all that bad because they're happening simultaneously. On top of that, this is Stewie talking about being in the womb and recounting his experiences, which honestly I think is one of the best things to come out of Stewie next to his gadgets and gizmos, and I really wish that they, extended on this in further seasons, but oh well, you can't just make him be an actual baby forever. And yeah, he's just sort of like a fucking gay wad. But to be fair, one thing I have to add about this episode is how obviously Seth MacFarlane uses Brian as a self-insert here. Like, some of these scenes are just so obviously meant to be like, oh wow, Brian is so sassy and cool and normal, such a middleman, XD Ruffle Mayo show Peter. Yeah, but overall it's still a really, really good episode, top of the list.
Welcome to Cheesy Charlie's!
Heil Hitler!
In this episode, Peter punches a woman at Chris's soccer game, which gets him put under house arrest. So as a result, he refurbishes his basement into a bar, which ultimately backfires as Lois is lusted over by other men visiting the bar as she's allowed to sing there. There's also a side plot where Stewie builds a time machine, which, if expanded on here, would have easily made this episode top of the list, but sadly it's just a side plot. Overall though, this episode is actually pretty good, with Peter learning to be more accepting and helping his wife around the house. Well, that was what I would say if they didn't pull that lame-ass shitty ending, where Stewie just rewinds his time machine and the whole episode actually didn't happen. Oh my god, whoo! Also, I just noticed, what the fuck are these crude drawings in the back? Anyways, I still think it was decent though, maybe like a 7 out of 10. So I'm putting it between Death as a Shadow and I Never Met a Dead Man.
Okay, so a Jewish guy and a Chinese guy walk into a bar, right? Oh, wait a second. Okay, Jewish guy and a Chinese guy walk into a bar.
I completely forgot Joe wasn't always a character. Anyways, the new neighbor Joe moves in this episode and Peter's extremely jealous of him because he's a hero and gets all the attention. There's also this plot about Peter's softball game, but that's not really relevant. Also, Meg and Stewie do their own shit as well. It's just sort of boring, not notable. I gotta say, this one was the most boring one of the bunch. I didn't really like it. The only thing that was fascinating to see is how different Joe's treated in the beginning of the show compared to later. Like here he was this orphanage saving, softball throwing Giga Chad that got all the attention, and nowadays he's just a fucking triple joke character that's a loser and his wife cheats on him all the time. It's very different. It's probably like flannerization or something. Anyways, I'm putting it at the bottom of the list.
So, Peter, have you found a replacement for your team?
No, and believe me, I've been looking.
Hideo-san would be honored to play for your team, but he wishes to know what compensation you offer.
Me love you long time?
Chris sucks at Boy Scouts, so Peter and the family drive to New York to keep him in. But on their way there, Peter poops at a casino, so Lois scambles the car in like 2 minutes, so like they're trapped, and then Peter and Chris go into the wild to maybe like get their car back from the casino owners. They're like native. Did I mention that? And then they get back, and Chris like leaves the Boy Scouts, and there's also Brian. He's like at home, and there's the Fonz. He's like sort of recurring gag. And yeah, this episode's plot sucks total ass. I'm sorry. I think one big reason these earlier episodes feel so disoriented is because of a thing I might call the 6-minute plot, where the characters just go on some random mini storyline before the actual episode starts. I'm not complaining now, because in later seasons this gets much worse, and it's not really the main point why they feel so disoriented, probably just the writers not knowing what to do. It's a new show after all. If this episode was like any other, this would have definitely been bottom of the list, but nah, this shit is funny. This is easily the funniest episode on the list. Every single joke lands, and with insane precision at that. I loved the cutaways and had a really difficult time choosing which moment to use at the end of this ranking. Honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and put this in second between Desert of Shadow and Shitty Shitty Death Bang. If this had a good plot, absolutely top of the list, but sadly not. This episode is awesome. By the way, I forgot to mention this, but it's amazing how Chris's actual talent in these earlier episodes. The only reason he doesn't want to join the Scouts here is because he's too busy with drawing fucking hentai or something. Which is something no modern Family Guy character would ever say. They all fall in one of 3 categories: idiot, pervert, and Stewie. Anyways, man, good episode.
Stupid, greedy savages!
Stewie, that's a terrible thing to say. This one particular tribe has lost their way, but most Native Americans are proud, hard-working people who are true to their spiritual heritage. They are certainly not savages.
Oh, that's funny, Mother. Just this morning you said they were lazy, like the dirty Mexicans. Just kidding. The Mexicans are a clean and industrious people with a rich cultural heritage.
Yeah, not like those dumb gargantuan Swedes. Actually, the Swedish people run the gamut from very short to tall. And did you know that Sweden gave us the brilliant inventor Alfred Nobel?
Yeah, which is more than we ever got from those freeloading Canadians. Canada sucks.
Now finally, to finish the season off, Brian and Peter get into an argument over a dog show, due to Brian believing he's being treated as a second-class citizen, and is forced to obey commands, so he just believes. But Peter saves him, because he's literally almost killed. Yippee! Whoa, Brian! Yeah, it's alright, I guess. This one was definitely really boring, especially since many of the jokes didn't land, so I probably put it next to A Hero Sits Next Door, but I like the premise a lot more than A Hero Sits Next Door, and this is the first time they actually do something with Brian. Also, fun fact, this is the first mention of Rupert in the entire series I'm aware of. This probably isn't true, by the way. I didn't pay that close attention during the other episodes. Overall, a sort of decent episode, putting it between Mind Over Murder and I Never Met a Dead Man.
Chris, you're hogging up all the fans.
Yo, well, you're hogging up all the ugly.
Usually at the end of a season, I would probably sit here and record my thoughts, which is what I did with the other two. I don't know why I didn't do that here. This is a new sound file overlaid onto the other one, which is also why there's no background music here. And I have no recollection of season 1, so I have absolutely no clue what I possibly could have said here. We're moving on to season 2. This one was good, I guess.
1, 2, 3.
Aunt Marjorie dies, she's one of the Pewterschmidts, and leaves Peter and Lois her fancy $1 million worth house in some fancy rich town. Peter and Lois then promptly move there because Peter sold their old house in Quahog without Lois' consent. In the end, he misuses the money though and fucks up, so everything is back to normal. There's several notable things about this episode. First of all, this is our first introduction to the Pewterschmidts and their rich lifestyle. Second, the intro shifted, playing at the very beginning of each episode now instead of about 1 minute in. But I gotta say, I prefer the latter. Anyways, this episode is awesome. It's way better than anything season 1 has to offer. You can tell the writers knew where they were going with this one, and there's no 6-minute plot. The jokes land with insane precision, and they are really funny. Also, the conclusion is good, and the plot flows well. There's just nothing to criticize here. You can also tell they put a lot of effort into this episode. There's literally a 3-minute long song called "We're Only Here to Wipe Your Ass." Also, I noticed one thing here, which is that there's a scene where Stewie tells 2 butlers to fight to the death, which could have been an inspiration for the first chicken fight, but I'm just guessing. Top of the list season 1 and overall a great episode.
Lois, sometimes it's appropriate to swear.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. You bastard.
This episode is all about Peter trying to impress his Catholic, hardworking dad that he's indeed not a failure, but because that doesn't work literally immediately, he borderline kidnaps the Pope, and they come to a conclusion that actually, Peter doesn't need to impress his dad because they fucking hate each other. That's not the interesting stuff here, of course. There's some interesting I think I found myself. Basically, apparently they wanted to set up a running gag early in the show where Chris goes to Lois sometimes and says some word and Lois is like, "Oh, Chris, word you just said is not a very nice word. Word you just said."
Knows those big gray pussy willows in his ears?
Chris, that's a terrible word. Pussy willows.
Which very obviously failed, like it's not even funny, it's just weird. There's a sunroom scene, which are incredibly rare, and Meg is apparently in a relationship with Kevin. I already mentioned this on the Hero Lives Next Door episode, but I'll say it again. In that episode, Meg basically tries to win over Kevin, but I didn't think much of it considering it only got like 2 minutes of airtime amongst the 4 plots and 50 cutaways. But apparently that's canon now. Anyways, this episode was good. So far season 2 has been a lot better than season 1. It seems like they really got into the flow here and knew where they wanted to go with the show. I'm putting it at second in the list, but that's only because it's really difficult to compete with the banger that came before this.
You're a good woman, Lois. Perhaps you won't burn in hell after all. Maybe you just go to purgatory with all the unbaptized babies. Hey, there you go, Lois. You love kids.
We bring the boom! That's what we do! We bring the boom! We bring the boom to you!
Y2K happened and the world blew up, so Peter and his family walked across the country to the Twinkie factory in Natick, building a tower called New Quahog, which they promptly get kicked out of because Peter is an idiot. The episode resolves in one of those shitty, it was all a dream cliche endings, but I really couldn't care less at all. This episode was one of the best Family Guy has to offer. But let's start with some more interesting facts first. First of all, we got our very first chicken fight of the entire show. Personally, hate me for it, but I like chicken fights, if they're not forced though. I think they're a decent way to blow animation budget, and a giant chicken is my favorite character of the entire series, and also the only skin I own in Fortnite, but that's beside the point. Also, I'm not supporting chicken fights here, I'm just saying they can be good. Anyways, another interesting thing here is that Trisha Takanawa is mentioned for the first time, and personally I like her a lot. She's one of those characters that just never gets old. She reminds me of my Japanese teacher at times. And then finally, the Meg and Kevin shit's back. She said, "You get a date with Kevin once and then the world blows up," meaning this was probably originally supposed to be an ongoing theme in the show. I really hate the fact that they effectively wrote her out of the show by making her a punching bag, because I want to see how this Kevin shit ends. Also, isn't Kevin like 22 in the later episodes? He's a literal war veteran and Meg didn't age at all, so I have no clue what to make of that, because he looks a lot younger here. Now on to the actual review of the episode. It's fucking amazing, one of the best Family Guy episodes of all time. I know for a fact that nothing is dethroning this until season 10, where another one of my favorite episodes would come up. The pacing and the writing is incredible. They did less cutaway gags, which resulted in the episode being less funny, but way more entertaining. And the pacing, chef's fucking kiss. It all seems completely reasonably paced, but the actual plotline goes from Peter not even knowing what Y2K is, to him and his family being kicked out of a post-apocalyptic town they built in a year, while singing a song that was used in the episode as a running gag. All of that on top of a chicken fight that lasts like a minute and a half. Literally peak television. I was already impressed by season 2 episode 1, but this is completely crazy and blew me out of the water. Top of the list both overall and season wise.
Peter, you've been down there all day. I hope you're all ready. Ah!
Oh my god! The government is here! Run, E.T., run!
Ryan is in the midst of a midlife crisis because he can't come to terms with the fact that Lois doesn't love him. That's basically it. Also, Stewie just starts pissing on random things halfway throughout the episode. It's not important. Anyways, first thing I noticed is that the intro shift is gone, which I think is awesome. I already gave my opinion on the intro shift, so let's hope this stays for now. Also, these episodes just keep getting funnier and funnier. Like, remember that one season 1 episode where I said it was funniest of the season? All of these are about on that level. Looking back, season 1 really sucked ass. Okay, well, it wasn't all that bad, just not as good as season 2. Also, right here we see Rupert used as a watermark for Stewie for the first time. To give some context, in the beginning of the episode, Brian pisses on the carpet and blames it on Stewie. And to keep this lie up, the second time he pisses on the carpet, he put Rupert right next to it to blame it on Stewie, meaning this is officially his main plushie from now on, and it's sort of his watermark. Also, Trisha Hakanawa is back, yay! Now, for my actual opinion on this episode, there's not much to say. I thought the episode was all about pretty funny. There was no 6-minute plot, and I think Brian being in love with Lois being put in the focus so early really tells you a lot about the type of guy he is, a massive dickhead. Personally, I found myself getting a bit bored about halfway through the episode, but that's mainly because I don't like Brian all that much, and they barely make jokes in that section of the episode. Overall, a good episode, but not my thing. Very similar to Holy Crap in a way, just slightly better. I'm putting it in between Peter, Caviar Eater, and Holy Crap.
Thank you, Diane. Sex. Some people have it anonymously. What kind of person would do that, you might ask? Well, I'm about to find out. I just picked up a complete stranger in a hotel bar, and he's in the bathroom right now, possibly doing drugs. Watch as I have sex with this potentially dangerous man.
Spooner Street wins a trophy for the best floaty at the city parade, but they aren't sure which household gets to keep the trophy, so they all fight each other. Meanwhile, Meg starts working in the diner so she can afford a Prada bag, but takes Stewie with her and tells people she's an unwed teenage mother, so she gets more tips. In the end, Stewie is taken by CBS into that one foster home that you can always see on TikTok, like there's just a billion clips of it there anyways, and the entirety of Spooner Street has a team up to get Stewie back. First of all, intro shift is still gone. It seems like they're pretty uncertain where to put the intro at this point, so I'm not going to mention it from now on because it just varies from episode to episode. Then we get a better look at the inhabitants of Spooner Street, starting with Cleveland and his family. Then we get to see the Swanson household with a redesigned Bonnie, and now we have confirmation that Quagmire is indeed single. Otherwise, I really didn't notice a whole lot in this episode other than the fact that we got to look at Kevin, but this time totally unrelated to Meg. It's very obvious here that they slowly started to cut down on cutaways and focus more on the story, which makes most episodes just middle of the road, but I do think this episode is very funny, even though there's no cutaways. Not much else to say, I liked it, not great but good. I'm putting it in between Brian in Love and Peter, Caviar Eater.
Quagmire.
Dee
Cleveland.
Joe.
Bonnie.
Lois.
Cleveland.
Lois.
Bonnie.
Quagmire.
Peter.
Loretta.
Peter is being haunted by death, and while running away from death, Death breaks his ankle, resulting in the Lord of Death simply not applying anymore. After that, Death gives Peter his role so that everybody knows the rules of Death still apply. Honestly, I really love the concept of this episode, and I hate the fact the world wasn't just completely fucked as soon as the rules of Death didn't apply. That would have been a bagger episode and would have landed it second on our list, but before we talk about that, some important things from this episode. It's winter, aka late fall, I'm not really sure. I really don't know why. It seems as though Family Guy was originally supposed to be set in real time, and I think there's no real reason for it to be set in winter, late fall, except if my theory is correct. Then that's a terrible word you just said in gags back.
Oh, 'cause he's got a lump on his boobie.
Chris, that's a terrible word. Phoebe.
Honestly, even though I never found it funny, I'm getting sort of emotionally attached to it, so I hope this isn't the last one yet. Also here we see Meg being used as a sort of a punching bag for the first time ever. Peter, when being haunted by death, tells Meg that she's the man of the house now. As much of a big turning point this is for the series, I really wish they just kept Meg a normal teenage girl. Sad. Anyways, it's also implied in this episode that the Griffins don't actually own their house, because when Death stays on the couch for a while, Peter just says, "You can't stay here, how are we gonna explain your presence to Mr. Roper?" Which is possibly the landlord of the Griffins. I did some research and apparently this was not the landlord also named Mr. Roper from some shitty ass sitcom that aired back in the day. But now I'm gonna imply this is canon from now on because I want it to be. Anyways, I think this episode is good. It's not funny, but I think the plot carries the thing. Funnily enough, I think this is the worst plot we've seen so far in season 2, but it's still not bad. I'm putting it at the bottom of the list, and this is the first episode to fall in the season 1 territory in the overall ranking.
We now begin our final approach into Los Angeles International. If you look out the window to your right, you'll see the San Fernando Valley, where my brother Gary makes a very nice living directing porn. We'll be on the ground in 10 minutes.
Lois takes over the theater group of London? What the fuck did I write down in this script? Lois takes over the theater group of Quahog and organizes a play, which is promptly hijacked by Peter after he's allowed to produce due to Lois feeling pity. In the end, though, the performance doesn't turn out of his shit and everybody claps. Also at the end, Lois gives a speech about how people shouldn't be clapping, which is easily the most ahead of their time social commentary I've ever seen. Like, she literally calls the performance slop, you can't make this up. This episode aged like fine wine. But before ranking, funny fact time. First Passion Draw is mentioned again in this episode. They already talked about it in the episode from season 1, which I thought was the funniest of the season. It's called The Sun Also Draws, but apparently it's now back. They apparently wanted for all their characters to have some elaborate quirks, with Lois having their piano stuff, Brian being a writer, etc. Which I think is really cool world building in any piece of media. You know, they're just little details where I can't help but point at them and show appreciation for them, because they're so cool and the writers seem to be very invested in what they're doing. We also see Brian being a pretentious asshole and Quagmire hating Brian for being a pretentious asshole for the first time. Something that would later turn into many boring B-plots. Stuff that I actually do care for, because I hate Brian and seeing somebody else on the show hate him as well is just so heartwarming, no matter how fucking boring the plots may be. Also, it's very clear that they cut down on storytelling here and focus more on telling jokes and cutaways, which in and of itself wouldn't be a bad thing, but since the last 3 episodes have been basically filled to the brim with plot, containing like 2 or 3 cutaways each, I think there's a decent balance here. On top of that, I love this plot. I'm always a huge fan of animated sitcoms doing something more interesting than somebody crashed their car, whoopsie doopsie daisy, and le sex is le bad, not trowage, without needing to drag in random celebrities. It's sort of an art in and of itself, because trust me, try to come up with a plot for a Family Guy episode that doesn't revolve around mundane issues and at the same time doesn't spawn in some random performance convention or celebrity. Right now, do it. If you found anything, I can almost guarantee to you that this idea is absolute dog shit that could not fill an episode. Anyways, I'm putting this one in second place between Peter, Caviar Eater, and the Boom.
I don't get it, Mom. If you're so mad at Dad for wrecking your show, why did you come to opening night?
I came because I love the theater. I mean, if I just came here to enjoy watching your father be humiliated when this asinine spectacle of his is ridiculed by everyone in town, what kind of person would I be?
A bitch.
The Griffin family is invited to some weird seminar to win a vote, but there they are offered a mystery box which Peter promptly takes. However, the mystery box only contains 3 tickets to a comedy show. There, Peter thinks he's funny, so he tells jokes at his workplace, one of which is a sexual joke about women to a woman. So he's sent to his seminar to channel his inner woman. And Lois loves him when he comes back, but then not anymore, and then everything's back to normal in the end because of lit tits. Did that sound way too much for one singular episode? That's because it fucking is. By the time Peter finishes the seminar, there's like 7 minutes left in the episode, and they threw in like a minute-long segment of Quagmire being a pervert without any commentary, so that doesn't make things much better. Also, this episode didn't even introduce anything cool or new at all. The only thing I found remotely interesting, but also hidden in the dialogue, aka background in this case, are these two pictures, which I assume are Lois' grandparents. A Google search for these two resulted in nothing, so I have no clue, and now I'm just curious on who these are. Anyways, this episode has a completely disoriented plot, no real message, and is painfully unfunny, even though the first few minutes were actually really decent. But after that, it's just women and their handbags and periods. XD, ruffle. I'm putting it at the bottom of the list.
I am gonna be the first one on Spooner Street to have his own boat!
Whoa, all hands on deck. I'm getting a boat.
Hey, Quagmire, I'm also getting a boat, too.
Right on! Woo! I can't wait to get my sea legs, yeah!
Well, at least I'll be the fattest guy on Spooner Street to get a boat.
Hey, I'm getting a boat.
Peter and Chris' favorite series goes over, so they describe Chris as a terminally sick patient and go to the Make-A-Wish Foundation to get their show back on air. When people start to notice this, they start praying for Chris. Peter says that Chris is healed so he doesn't get into any trouble after that, which in turn leads to Peter being worshipped as some kind of divine healer, which makes God angry, so he sends plagues for Earth until Peter apologizes. This episode is about as jam-packed as the last one, but it stays on topic so I don't mind it that much. First of all though, funny facts. Basically, Stewie is being bathed in the sink in this episode, which is weird considering they never do that in later seasons. For example, in viewer mail number 2, Stewie is put into the bathtub, even though he hasn't changed visually at all. So it's a bit weird he's being bathed in the sink here. Also, I just noticed how differently Tom Tucker and Diane Simon are used in these earlier episodes. This has been an ongoing theme throughout the seasons, but in later seasons they're like an actual news reporter, and here they're just vulgar fucks that spout the weirdest shit on live television and give each other theirs. Anyways, I didn't like this episode that much. It suffers from the same problem as the last one, mainly being completely jam-packed and them switching plot points every 3 minutes. And of course the fact that they barely use cutaways here. Absolutely not my thing. Putting it between I am Peter, hear me raw, and Death is a bitch.
Don't worry, I'll talk to her.
Lois decides to run for a school board, but after one of Peter's old teachers gets fired, he decides to run against Lois and leak a naked picture of her on the campaign. In the end, he wins, but still retires and fucks everything up due to him being a massive idiot. Shocker. There's also a side plot about Stewie coming to terms with the fact that he sort of likes Lois, which I thought was neat. But anyways, first of all, funny facts. In the first scene of this episode, we see Rupert for the very first time in this episode, and Stewie talks to him in depth we've never seen before. I don't believe the writers had any clue how big of a character he would later become, but it's very apparent they're playing around with him here. There's also a sudden cutaway gag where Peter reads checkers, which might be the only one of that kind in the entire series. There's also a cutaway gag where Peter talks about his Mexican uncle that used to be the best at cockfights, but surprise surprise, he actually beats chickens up instead of betting on them, which might be a hint that chicken fights are gonna be reoccurring from now on. Now for this episode, there's not much to say here. At first I actually thought this was social commentary on the two-party electoral system, because it was literally Griffin versus Griffin, with colors matching blue and red and voters being easily swayed by a few sentences. But given the fact that they don't really elaborate on that, it's either very silent commentary without point, or just not the case. In my opinion, this is a very good episode. It's sort of similar to The King is Dead, but just slightly worse because of a more far-fetched plot and less cutaways. But The King is Dead was a really good episode, so being just slightly worse than it is actually a compliment, putting it below Love Die Trophy, which shows how minuscule the quality difference between these episodes really are.
What that means. And community activists.
Go, Dad!
He can't hear you.
Go, Dad!
Chris paints a really cool painting, which Peter manages to sell for $5,000. So they're invited to New York so Chris can become an artist. There, Chris is manipulated by some arch-schmucky that he can never see his father again. So Peter, instead of trying to get Chris back, tries to make Meg popular by making her talk to pigeons, which obviously fucking doesn't work. But in the end, all is well because Chris is let go, due to him sucking dick and balls at Art. First of all, funny facts. Meg is used as a punching bag here again, but this time a lot more obviously than last time. She's called fat by some carnival worker, called his son by Peter, and is called Talentless. Then of course, Chris' reoccurring art hobby is back, which I've already stated my thoughts on. Then, the arch-monkey from the episode says the phrase, "We're in the new millennium" at the end of the episode, which likely confirms my thoughts that Family Guy was originally supposed to be set in real time a few episodes ago, where I pointed out it was snowing outside. And for the very last funny fact here, Stewie goes to some massive ass room with lots of nation flags here, and this scene pisses me off so much. They took their time painting the fucking Faroe Islands correctly in the back, but this is Russia? Also, what the hell is this inverted Czech Republic flag in the background? This is very visible for most of the scene. Stewie stops here. It's the first flag in the background. Now onto my thoughts about this episode. Personally, I really loved it. First of all, the visual design is amazing. Not only did they very obviously put a lot of effort into these New Yorkie backgrounds, painting elaborate backgrounds filled with trash for only one scene, but they also worked a lot with visual gags here as well. They also designed tons of new characters, for example Artie Chris, Kate Moss, and the Arch-Monkey. There's however one thing about this episode I don't like, that being the plot. It's way too dragged out at the beginning and a perfect example for why I hate 6-minute plots. Luckily, they managed to get out of it with the good pacing they do here. The 6-minute plot is like 8 minutes long, but if you asked me, I would have guessed maybe like 4 at most. Also, I don't think this episode is particularly funny either, but I don't really care that much. This episode just comes with a certain subjective level of enjoyment I can't quite narrow down. Putting it between The King is Dead and Peter Caviar Eater.
Oh, we used to kid this guy all the time. Bob misses his mommy. Bob misses his mommy.
Meg is embarrassed by Peter at a local festival, and by Chris and the others at a sleepover, so she decides that the best course of action here is to take her parents to a live problem reviewing show with Diane Simmons as a host. There, they get picked up by a studio executive, and they get cast for their own live-action reality shows. In the end, they all quit out though and have to stay in a motel until the contract ends. I love this episode. It's funny, it's got a really good premise, I like the way they handle the plot, and I'm pretty sure we just got to see how the Meg-Kevin relationship ended. After embarrassing Meg at the festival, a naked Peter, he was naked at the festival by the way, goes up to Kevin that works at a gas station and just points out Meg in the car and greets him like nothing ever happened. If this is the last we ever see of this relationship, then I think we know how that ended. Otherwise, this episode is just filled to the brim with good gags. Even though there's not much to say about this episode, it's going in second behind The Boom, which is effectively first place as The Boom is one of my favorite episodes of all time.
Here, a good breakfast is the foundation of a good day.
And a bad breakfast is the foundation of indigestion. Hey-o! Hey, I'm Brian.
Stewie's over at Nana's house, the Pieguyrulz's house. This is the second time we ever see them, and Lois sends Brian to pick him up. This goes horribly wrong and they have to complete a journey to get to Rhode Island again. On the way, Brian also finds his mother in Austin, which is cool. In the meantime, Peter gets obsessed over a communicative tape, which is cool I guess, one of my favorite side plots this season. Remember how I said no episode was gonna beat The Boom? Well yeah, no episode is gonna beat The Boom, but this one comes awfully close. It's really fascinating to see how fleshed out Brian and Stewie's dynamic was early in the show. Not only that, but this is literally the first Brian and Stewie plot ever, so they basically nailed it spot on the first time. On top of that, we get to see Brian's origins, and we get another look at the Pieguyrulz. I really could not have enjoyed this episode more. This was the only road tour I hadn't seen yet, and it's the second best one, falling just beneath my favorite episode of the entire series. The humor is amazing, the pacing is good, the plot is good, the Stewie-Brian dynamic is much more complex and not as flanderized as it would later become. This is just genuine peak. Sadly, there's not a lot of funny facts here, but this episode doesn't need to have them included. They focus more on the plot and that's perfect. I'm calling it, if this episode had no side plot, it would have been the best of the show. Sadly, I'm placing it in second, falling slightly behind the boom.
Hola. Me llamo es Brian. Let's see. Nosotros queremos ir con ustedes.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But actually, when you said me llamo es Brian, you don't need the ace. Just me llamo Brian.
Oh, you speak English?
No, just that first speech and this one explaining it.
You're kidding, right?
Okay.
'Cause if you use Toad, then I'm telling you, you can kiss your life goodbye.
A toad-licking epidemic breaks out at T. James Woods High School, resulting in Peter going undercover as Lando Griffin to stop it. Believe it or not, he actually turns out to be really popular, and after stopping the drug epidemic, he wants to take Meg to the dance to make her popular as well. This doesn't actually happen though, he takes Connie DeMico instead. But at the very end, he drops out on Connie DeMico at the dance, making Meg popular instead. First of all, funny facts. This is the first episode which Connie DeMico and her clique appear in, and I'm pretty sure she doesn't appear for a damn long time after this, making it pretty surprising that her character even survives as long as it did. Then of course we have the very obvious fact that Meg and Chris go to different schools. In the pilot, Chris literally just says, "I'm 13", making him a middle schooler, but apparently I just didn't notice that. This is proof that the characters did actually age over the seasons, as they are depicted going to the same school later on, like for example in that one viral ass clip where they beat up some children and somebody put boom music over it. Anyways, we get introduced to a new character here, Mr. Shepard, which is also a recurring character later on, and here we see his suit is brown, which is actually a different color than it later on is. Whoa! No way! And the last funny fact for this episode isn't necessarily a funny fact as much as it is a personal anecdote, but back in the day when I was like 10 or 11, I used to play this game called Animation Throwdown. It's basically just a card game where they take prominent figures from shows like Archer and King of the Hill and throw in the game together, and I always assumed that the toad-licking stuff was from Futurama, because you know they had the Hypno Toad, and the toads in this episode do look an awful lot like they could be from Futurama. Anyways, this episode was fucking amazing, like holy shit! I loved the plot, and it was refreshing to see Peter being a good dad after the last few episodes, and they also had the song in the episode where Peter literally sings why drugs are bad, and I started out just thinking, oh my god, what is this gonna be? But holy shit, this slaps way more than it should have. I'm putting this episode in second between The Boom and Road to Rhode Island, which, by the way, is definitely gonna put this episode in like the top 30 overall.
Yeah, I was terrified of asking Phoebe Diamond to the prom. I finally got up the guts, but I had this damn nervous twitch. Phoebe?
Yeah?
I was wondering if you'd do me the honor of
Lois signs Stewie up for daycare, where he finds a girlfriend and then breaks up with her sometime later. That plot is irrelevant and I won't be talking about it. Meanwhile, Lois gets a part-time job as a stewardess and Peter flies with her as all his flights are now free. But at the end, they're trapped in Cuba after hijacking, where Lois finally decides to quit her job and they go to the United States illegally because they can't wait 2 fucking weeks for their passport. Wow. First of all, some funny facts. My theory that the show is supposed to be in real time is proven right once again, as Chris is seen taking down the Christmas decoration in this one. If you can't recall, the last episodes were set in winter, aka end of 1999. Then we also get the first Closet Monkey and the first Drunken Clam appearance, 2 major things that featured here. Overall, this was a good episode. I'm sorry if I sound like I'm half-assing this episode, by the way. I am writing the script at 2 AM. I just worked on this for like 4 hours and it's 3 AM because it's the 24th right now. And I still want an episode out this year. Putting it between Love Day Trophy and Running Mates. Anyways, I'm sleeping now so that a catastrophe like this doesn't happen again.
You know, you people are nothing like the communists they show on TV.
We now return to the communists.
I hear report cards were handed out today. What were your grades?
Quit Stalin and answer your father. Go ahead, honey, and tell us your marks.
Like Khrushchev?
Did somebody say Khrushchev?
Peter and Lois debate about getting a new car, but when they eventually do so, it breaks down immediately. By pure coincidence, Peter then meets a member of the Mafia, allowing him to break their car so that insurance gets a new one. After that, the mob boss of the Mafia wants a favor back from Peter, so he orders Peter to take his completely unlikable nephew, Big Fat Paulie, out to the movies. Peter then tells the nephew that they can't be friends because of his wife, so Big Fat Paulie orders a literal hit on Lois and is killed promptly after, leaving the rest of the episode dealing with how they can get rid of the hit. First of all, funny facts. In this episode, Peter goes to a little diner, which is apparently owned by Cleveland, which is extremely weird considering there's zero mention of this anywhere else in the show or the internet. Like, really, what the hell happened here? We also get more confirmation Chris is a middle schooler, due to him dropping his age in this episode. Honestly, I can't even believe he's 13 in this episode. Like, I really always believed he was 15 or 16, which he is in the later seasons, and I'm glad they aged him up because he just does not look 13 in the slightest. And for the last funny fact, the crude wrongs I mentioned in season 1 are now finally fixed. Yippee! Personally, I really enjoyed this episode. Like, it's pretty amazing how they just managed to make consistently good episodes here. Like, at this point, I'm sure that the top 50 overall in the end is just gonna be full of season 2 episodes. This episode wasn't even particularly funny either. I just think that the premise is good and they expand on that premise well, because they just cram so much into 22 minutes, it's insane. Like, it's not even poorly paced either, they just cram tons of stuff in and it fits. But I should mention that sometimes the strategy results in massive catastrophes. Anyways, it's going between Peter Caviar Eater and Love Thy Trophy.
All I gotta do is make a call.
Ah, jeez! You okay?
Chris is self-conscious about his weight, so Peter puts him on a diet. But at some point in the weight loss journey, he learns of liposuction surgery, taking Chris to a lipo doctor. But while Chris declines, Peter himself then actually gets lipo and acts like a dick until he's fat again because he falls in a tub of lard in the Quahog lard factory. This is actually how they end the episode. There's also a B-plot about Stewie getting fat, which I don't care much for at all. I just think the design of Stewie is funny. Anyways, this would have been a great episode if they just focused on Chris here. Seeing him struggle with his weight issues is something that was very interesting for me in the first half, and left me rooting for him. But they literally just drop out of it like halfway through the episode, what the fuck? And ironically, if these two were separate episodes, they'd almost likely be second and third or second and fourth or something overall. Because I think both separate themes are extremely interesting. But no, they just abandon one halfway into the episode and leave it unconcluded. I'm not even kidding. There's no conclusion to this Chris plot. Fuck you. On top of that, this is a very iconic and funny episode as well. It's got the ripped Peter. They're gonna be looking for army guys, which was the second exposure I ever had to Family Guy. Only beaten out by me watching the entire That Boom episode at like 3 years old, which is a core memory of mine, also possibly the reason I like it so much. Overall, this episode is just nothing but all around disappointing. So many good jokes and two crazy plotlines wasted on this. Sad, honestly. Going between Love Thy Trophy and Damn It Janet, because I actually did still end up enjoying it.
Trust me, Chris, sometimes it's better not to fit in. You're all stupid. See, they're gonna be looking for army guys.
Peter finds out he's not officially part of the United States, aka his house and the territory surrounding it isn't. So he founds his own nation, Pretoria, which quickly gets sieged by the US after he tries to annex Joe's pool. First of all, I found one funny fact, that being the fact that Jerome isn't a barkeeper here. And this is probably gonna be the last funny fact for some time now. The reviews were getting way too long, and if I don't see anything interesting, don't expect me to call it out. Anyways, iconic episode. Extremely funny, insanely good premise. Only thing I didn't like is the 6-minute plot in my opinion. Now me personally, I'm also a big fan of characters trapped in X location, how do they get out type plots, and this is just exactly what I'm looking for. Lois homeschooling the Pits, Peter inviting dictators over, all just nice bits that I thought were really entertaining to watch. Even though I don't have much to say, it's still a really good episode. putting it between Road to Rhode Island and 15 Minutes of Shame.
Oh, this is the newest province of Pretoria. I call it Johio.
What? You can't just come over here and annex my pool.
Oh, yeah? Well, according to paragraph 7, sentence 3, word 8 of the Geneva Convention, the. So tough luck, Swanson.
Meg wants to get into college, but can't due to a lack of extracurriculars. As a result, she starts writing for her school newspaper, which goes horribly wrong when Peter swaps out one of her articles for an article called Luke Perry's Escape. That leads to them getting sued by Luke Perry, and they change the plot 10 minutes into the episode. Gee fucking jeez, why would they do that? This episode was so funny, especially with the little side plot where Stewie hijacks Chris using a device so he isn't a short anymore. But that ends in some super scene as well because they gotta focus on the irrelevant A-plot. They start this episode with like a 5-minute scene of the family in the university, which was so perfect. I really thought to myself this episode would beat the boom if they kept going like this. It was so funny. I laughed at nearly every scene. The interview was funny as well. Peter swapping the story out was interesting to see as well. But the second it cut to the living room with Meg saying, "We're getting sued by Luke Perry," I just knew it was fucking over for this episode, honestly. The last 3 or 4 episodes, they swapped out the plot 10 minutes in. I just didn't mention it in episode 16 because they stayed on topic. I thought it sucked in episode 17, but still enjoyed both plots. And they stayed sort of on track, but it just reminds me of one of those shitty 5 minutes plots they do at the beginning of each Family Guy episode nowadays, that have zero correlation to the main plot at all. The characters just effectively say, "Well, that's odd, folks," and then the camera shifts to something completely different. This one is even worse. Peter just spawns himself into the episode, even though he wasn't in focus at all, and completely derails it. This is almost completely unenjoyable except for the B-plot in the first 10 minutes. On top of that, the second plot contains some random celebrity they spawned in, and drew with way more facial details than the rest of the family, which is so cliche in my least favorite type of episode trope in TV. If this episode didn't have the first 10 minutes and the B-plot for itself, this episode would have gone at the bottom of the list, and with flying distance with that, but it does have that going for itself. I'm putting it between Death is a Bitch and I Am Peter, Hear Me Raw, which says a lot about an episode I enjoyed this much in the beginning. The Luke Perry shit is just the first downright unenjoyable thing I've seen from the show.
What about my interview?
Mayor West asked me to give you this.
Uh-oh. Of course, you realize this means war.
Pawtucket Pat, the main beer brewer of the city, hides 4 scriptures in his beers and scatters them all across Quahog. And surprise, surprise, Peter wins one! Would have been a pretty shitty plot if he didn't. He then goes on a tour but gets kicked out halfway through, instead going home and accidentally discovering that he is gifted at the piano while drunk. This emerges with a B-plot about Lois trying to win a piano competition, and I think the entire episode plays out pretty well, with Lois winning in the end and Peter being wasted. Personally, I think this episode would have been a lot better if they just cut out the tour scenes entirely, and even let the scripture part play out, or just cut that out as well, and then introduce the piano stuff, because I think that the episode would have been way more charming if Peter just walked in and kicked absolute ass. Also, this isn't just exclusive to this episode, but it's amazing how often you can just point your fingers and stuff and go, "What? Oh, that's where that's from." Like, I've done something like this, I'm pretty sure, for every single episode this season. It's insane how many memes this season sparked. Anyways, this is one of those episodes that's just very consistently good and funny throughout, where I can't say much. Going between there's something about Paulie and Peter Caviar Eater. Final episode of the season, and also the one where I have the least amount of things to say. Anyways, Peter tries to teach Chris some responsibility by getting him a job, but switches up on him trying on Cleveland Jr. instead, but after seeing he is a gifted golfer. But at the end, they both realize they're father and son and shouldn't leave each other. Oh, so heartfelt. Aww. There's also this suicide plot where he gets a flu after getting vaccinated at the checkup, which is sadly just like any other story plot we've seen so far, completely irrelevant and inconclusive. Not worth mentioning. Yeah, I like the episode. I really don't know what to say here. This is a good episode, but there's literally nothing to say about it. This could just be from me being fatigued from writing the script at 2 AM again, no. I like the Hickadoola song, going between Damage Jammit and Running Mates.
What does Hickadoola mean? What does Hickadoola mean?
Well, Hickadoola's that special feeling you get when you hold hands with your best gal.
It's cheering real loud for the home team.
It's catching the perfect wave.
It's obeying all the rules.
No way!
Yeah, okay, so that's basically my opinions on Season 2 and older episodes. I think this is a very good season, and I really don't know if anything is gonna be able to top it. I heard that Season 3 is like way better actually, and that some of the best episodes feature there. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. This is one of, if not the worst Family Guy episode of all time. First of all, the plot for this episode is incredibly horrific and I refuse to describe it. It is all over the place, horribly paced, and I cannot describe it without paraphrasing what the characters are doing on screen like some Quentin Reviews video. This episode sucked. Apparently they wanted to make some big special or crazy start to the season because it's a two-parter followed by the next episode, but they failed so badly I have no clue how it even happened. I do not know where to start on this one. First of all, not one joke lands, the humor is incredibly bad. Then we have the episode structure. What the fuck even happened here? Whoever wrote this or aka arranged the scenes in this order had no future as a writer, I can guarantee you. The first 15 minutes consist of an A and a B plot, both of which change plot points within themselves 4 times each. That is the plot being changed 8 times in 15 minutes. And on top of that, they never even focused on anything. The longest scene in the first 15 minutes is like 30 seconds long. It is headache-inducing to watch this episode. The plot makes 0 sense. They put 2 30-second segments of each 2 plots in a 2-minute space and then they switch the points for both of them. It makes no sense. I can't even describe it. And the plot points are so horribly paced as well. For example, the Brian helps old people stuff in the beginning of the episode. He starts out in one scene. Then we see Peter do irrelevant bullshit. The next scene, he already quits and goes to Joe. And everything from the 15-minute mark onwards, oh boy, it sucks as well. First of all, they merge both plots in the stupidest way possible. Brian goes into rehab and then Peter follows along because he won a vacation. Problem is that he booked a cruise and has been specifically preparing for that cruise the entire fucking episode, so that's completely pointless again. They make some bad jokes and then Brian gets home to a welcome from rehab party and just leaves. That's it. I was confused when I first saw this. I have rewatched this episode again. This is the worst ending to an episode of television I have ever witnessed. I am not kidding when I say this. This is unprompted. There is no context or build-up and no purpose. Ryan heads out, goes into a taxi and leaves. That is the end and then to be continued flashes on screen. Fuck you. There is no build-up to this. There is no talk at the rehab clinic where Brian states he wants to leave. There is nothing. He leaves, that's it. This has no context. I am simply done writing about this episode, I'm sorry. I do not know where to start. It is horrible though. One of, if not the worst Family Guy episodes of all time. I'm done. What a horrific start to the season, even on my behalf. I can't put into words how much I hate this episode. It's the first episode on the list, but I can already spoil you, this is the worst episode this season.
So, Peter, where should we go for your week off?
Well, I was thinking we could all go to Purgatory like we did last year.
This isn't bad. It's not that good, but yeah, it's not that bad.
Okay, now part 2 to this incredibly horrible start to the season, and it's pretty alright. Basically, Brian leaves for Hollywood here, and we get to see some of his life in Hollywood. Meanwhile, the family goes to Hollywood themselves after being flown out for a TV show named Kids Say the Darndest Things, because Stewie got cast for an episode, which I really think they should have focused more on. It's way better than whatever Brian does here. Basically, Brian gets cast as a director for a porn movie, and even wins an award and tries to hide it from his family, which he specifically invited to his set before even knowing that he was directing a porn movie. That's it. I have to say, this episode was better than the last one, but that isn't saying much. I thought Stewie was extremely funny and cool to see here, and this is the first time they actually give one of his plots a good conclusion. And also, I like the concept of it. The other plot though, I can't say the same thing. I thought that the premise was pretty okay, but Brian being the main character instantly makes any sort of story mediocre at best. He's just unlikable at worst here, and when he's at his best, he's replaceable and shitty. He's only really ever funny when he's getting shit on by Stewie for being a pseudo-intellectual asshole and not being put in the spotlight for it. There's like a 2-minute scene of him bitching and whining that his co-worker got successful at the beginning. He's just an asshole, why should I ever feel sorry for him? But this episode wasn't gruesome like the last one, just mediocre, going at the top of the list. I have to say, season 3 is the weakest one so far. Hopefully they snap out of it in the next episode.
And now back to Kids Say the Darndest Things.
It's okay, take your time. Then what happened?
He said he would kill me if I ever said anything.
Do you remember what he looked like?
Yeah, he had a scar on his arm, and he had a big, stupid doo-doo head.
A big, stupid doo-doo head!
Peter's company gets bought out by a cigarette company, and the people that are now the CEOs make him president of the company to convince everybody that smoking is cool and the industry is full of light-hearted people, sending him to Congress to convince them that an anti-smoking bill that was proposed shouldn't go through. But in Congress, he sees Stewie smoking and effectively says the equivalent of, "No, this can't be," and just denies doing what he's supposed to do, leaving us with the deep message of cigarettes are bad. Wow, very deep. Then we have no clue what happens after that. The company Peter is the literal president of gets fined $100 million. He should be out of a job and millions in debt, but no, apparently not. Personally, I believe this isn't even much better than the 2 episodes that came before this. It's just boring. I really have no clue how they went from season 2, one of the best seasons of any TV show I've ever seen, to this. It all feels so pointless. The characters just bounce around from plot to plot. The plots suck. It's all so tiresome. Like, be for real, let's take a look at how Peter is made president. He just goes to the CEOs, says they suck and smoking suck, and they make him president. What? On top of that, the humor doesn't hit at all. Like, most of it is just taking some random politician, which I assume were actually in office at the time, and just saying, "Well, politician, you make politician face. You sure did that thing," and then just moving on. That's it. Those are the jokes. It's all so boring and shitty to sit through, going between the last 2 episodes.
Trust me, Peter, the last thing we want is to get kids to start smoking.
What, then what about that graph on the wall that says the first thing we want is to get kids to start smoking?
That? Oh, that's just something my son made me in art class.
Huh. Well, then what about that poster that says the graph was not made in art class? We really do want kids to start smoking.
War gets invaded by British people after a storm. Weird plot point, but I don't mind. And Peter hates them. But after a little conquest to kick out the British, which is mainly just independence war stuff like, wouldn't it be funny if we flew away the tea of the British and called it the Tea Party? Peter being oblivious to the fact that these things didn't really happen doesn't make it funny, you know. The new British bar gets set on fire, resulting in everybody blaming it on Peter. So Peter and his friends go to jail, while Lois tries to prove that Peter really didn't set the bar on fire. So he's set free because he really didn't set the bar on fire, and the British man that owned the bar and really set it on fire gets arrested for insurance fraud. And also all the British people just despawn, they never really go anywhere. At the end of the episode they're just gone next one. Anyways, this episode is a wonderful return to form. As stupid of a plot as British people's spawn rates increase in Quahog by 10% may be, I think this is a funny episode. Also, I love episodes where characters go to jail, especially when they're all in one cell together. Something about those plotlines just strikes me, I don't know what it is. Also, I like the side plot here, where Stewie just tries to teach some British girl American pronunciation. It's funny seeing him get so unreasonably irritated over something this minuscule and thinking the girl's pronouncing words wrong. Really goes to show how he's just a baby, an aspect of his character long forgotten in modern times. It's funny because last season basically all Stewie plots were just incredible time wasters with no conclusion, but this season they're carrying the episodes. Only thing I didn't like here was the Spanish reporter. I don't know why they would possibly insert a second Trisha in the show. She has a nowhere near the charm Trisha has, and has no unique character trait, so I don't know why they inserted here. Anyways, that's just a minuscule detail though, this episode is going at the top of the list. Even though, stopping to think about it, this is pure mediocre middle of the road by season 2 standards. But you know what, who cares, they called themselves, let's hope it doesn't slip again.
Wait a minute. Something's different.
Evening, gents. How about a nice warm lager?
And help yourself to a packet of crisps.
Or a ruddy nice plum pudding.
Holy crap! It's a gay bar!
Meg is ostracized by the popular kids, for example Connie and Miko, so Lois helps her get revenge. I noticed here that they effectively replaced her entire clique with other characters. They aren't important in any way, so I wonder why they went to the effort of redesigning them, when the old characters were just sitting right there and they were interchangeable, but anyways. Meanwhile, Peter gets jealous of Chris for having a bigger dick than him, so he tries to compensate it, but in the end they make up. This episode wasn't as good as the last one, but overall still pretty enjoyable. The only thing I found sort of weird here was the Chris and Peter stuff. Like, could it seriously not have been anything else? We're at season 3 and you're already bringing out the familiar size comparison context. That's just fucking odd, especially considering Chris is 13 here. Yeah, but anyways, I don't want to sound like an oversensitive Twitter fag, it's not that bad. Also, the Meg side plot was so satisfying to see. Connie Miko is perhaps the only character I like as than Brian, which is self-explanatory because she is made to sound like a bitch, but anyways, still something I love to see. Even though the hashtag epic porn part only happens for like 4 seconds at the end, and it's just Quagmire being a pedophile.
Hey there, sweetie. How old are you?
16.
18. You're first.
Mom!
But anyways, in total, we just have a sort of weird plotline that was still pretty enjoyable though, and one satisfying one that wasn't all that interesting though, going in second.
Hey, Chris, you want a race? On your mark, your set, go! First one to the marker where that Pakistani girl fell through the ice after coming to the States to get treatment for her severely burned face, which she got when the man she refused to marry dumped sulfuric acid on her wins. I win!
Peter goes golfing on his anniversary with Lois, but there he has a near-death experience, which results in Death showing up and telling Peter how he met Lois and giving some flashbacks, which is dope as fuck because we also get to see how he met Quagmire in Cleveland. As basic of a plot as this and how much of a potential disaster this could have been, considering it's Family Guy and heartfelt stories never go well here, I really believe this episode is easily the best this season so far. The writers did a really good job encapsulating that fresh, heartwarming love feeling here, and this episode is really impactful considering we've never seen any flashbacks of how Peter and Lois got together before. It's always just been there together. Yay. The way they decided to make Carter the main problem here instead of Peter being mentally retarded is also a great choice as well. We've seen enough episodes where Peter is a problem, Carter being opposed here is just way better, and also way more fitting considering how rich the Pieguyrulz family is. So it makes sense they'd be opposed to Lois marrying some village idiot like Peter. Also, am I the only one that's noticing how Dev does way too much in these earlier episodes? Like, I'm pretty sure he's gotten more important plotlines than half of the main cast. Same for Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons. I'm pretty sure they've gotten more lines than Chris and Brian. Anyways, this is a very good episode, going in first.
Oh, kids, you don't need to do anything special for our anniversary. Just your father.
I hope he doesn't wait and get your gift at the last minute again.
My goodness, a human thumb. Where did you ever find this?
It was on eBay.
This episode's plot is too fucking disoriented and jam-packed, I won't even begin to explain it. Basically, the first 6 minutes are unfunny New York jokes, then it's 5 minutes of Lois learning to fight, 2 minutes of actually good and interesting scenes, and the rest is just whatever. It's Lois, Peter, and the family in general fighting. I'm not even kidding, there's a 2-minute long scene of them all fighting in the end, and what seems like a budget chicken fight. And then everything is back to normal, even though Lois and Peter just had insane marital problems like 2 minutes ago, and Stewie was at therapy. This episode has no plot, it's just trying to be funny in the first 6 minutes, which fails so horribly. None of the jokes land at all, it's either just New Yorkers and their accents, am I right fellas? Or overly specific jokes about certain artists that I've never even heard of before. Then the Lois fighting plot was okay, but from there on out I have genuinely no clue what they even did. I am not exaggerating, gun to head, I could not describe you or summarize the last 9 or so minutes of this episode. Watch this episode for yourself, it's confusing and just pointless. It's like they needed to produce one more episode and they had a week left to submit the season, so they gave some random co-worker the task of coming up with a plot for an episode and writing it in like an hour. If I wrote this stupid piece, I wouldn't even put my name on it. What a dreadful episode, going between the thin light wine and bright as Hollywood.
And shame on the network that puts this junk on the air.
Peter, maybe you shouldn't say anything bad about the network.
Oh, why? What are they gonna do? Cut our budget? I wanna go get a beer.
They're the only funny joke of the episode. Meg starts working as an unpaid intern at Channel 5 because she falls in love with Tom Tucker. Well, there, she's forced to work with Neil Goldman. Neil then kisses Meg during a special report because he's madly in love with her, leading to Meg doing a report on why he's disgusting and that was only out of an emergency. Neil then wants to kill himself, but Meg saves his life. There's also this side plot about Stewie getting his tricycle stolen by a bully, which I thought was pretty neat, but I didn't like the way they wrapped it up. Lois just goes, "Oh Stewie, look at what I found," even though we very clearly see the tricycle get stolen by a bully, but who cares, I like the plot. Overall, this is a really good one, and one of the first good episodes this season. The only critique I have here is that Meg doesn't really learn anything by the end. She just sort of goes, "Neil Goldman, you disgusting, dirty, retarded, awful, stupid freak! I hate you! But don't kill yourself." Which sort of sucks because I want them to go somewhere with this relationship. They've not done anything really impactful yet except for maybe the thin white line. But that was such a fucking catastrophe, I won't count it. On top of that, it only lasted like an episode, so who cares? Overall, I do think this episode was one of the best ones so far, and I think that's mainly because they stayed away from pop culture references here. Like, I get making episodes or little jokes regarding genuinely big things happening at the time, but trust me, the last 3 episodes of the show were so genuinely jam-packed with cutaways and gags regarding random actors that died 5 years ago at this point, and nothing was funny. This episode really only had like 2 of those jokes, so I found it way funnier. Going behind Death Lives. Peter accidentally kills his boss, Mr. Wheat? Yes, something French. Anyways, and he gets a new job as a jouster at the medieval festival. What? This is one of those episodes where when you're watching, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. But then you finish the episode and you realize, wait a minute, what the fuck did I just even watch? There's literally nothing to say, the plot is way too far-fetched and sucks, and most of the comedy consists of making fun of Mort for some reason. Also, they don't give Peter his job back by the end of the episode and even acknowledge it within the episode.
What's that gonna do for a job?
Oh, it'll be okay, Chris. Remember that episode of The Honeymooners when Ralph lost his job, but at the end of the show he didn't get it back?
Oh yeah, what was up with that? That bugged the crap out of me.
But you know, airtime restrictions, right? Could have possibly cut out the 2-minute scene of the kids singing a good night song to Mr. Wee and given the thing a normal conclusion, but just a suggestion in my book, I'm no writer. This episode was sort of boring, but I guess okay, it's going around the middle of the list. There's really nothing to say.
Yeah, I hope so, because if I blow this, I'm gonna have to go back to my old job at the electric company.
Duh.
Et. Bet. I knew that. Slow it down. It. Pit. Come on, pal. It's my first day. At. Fat. Oh, that's it, buddy.
Wow, what a genuinely funny and interesting episode. I am so surprised this came from season 3. Anyways, first of all, I want to apologize for what I said last episode. Apparently, Peter losing his job was canon. I just assumed he'd continue working at the factory, just with a different boss, but apparently not. Anyways, Peter gets a job as a fisherman and buys a boat for $50,000. But because he can't afford it, he takes out a loan at a shady bank. But that doesn't work. Instead, they sell his house because it was in the fine print, and Peter needs to find a way to pay the bank $50,000 in 2 days. Then he finds this urban fisherman legend called Daggermouth, with a $50,000 reward for its killing. It turns out it was just a robot, but he still manages to kill it and claim the reward. Yippee. Meanwhile, Meg and Lois go on spring break together, and Lois gains all the popularity, in the end transferring it all to Meg though. I thought this plot was really awesome and funny, but there's nothing to note about it. Anyways, what an amazing episode, definitely one of the best ones so far. It's just so funny, they have a good joke at like every turn and corner, and they don't need to put the characters in outlandish situations to pull it off. It's such a good episode. Simple plot, extended to the fullest, but it stays on topic the entire episode. Also, the fisherman's job unlocked so many cool memories for me. I'm genuinely so surprised this was his long-term job in the series for like 2 seasons, and I wonder how it ended because I've never seen it mentioned on the internet. I just have vague memories of me watching episodes where Peter goes fishing and thinking it was odd because he worked at a brewery when I was like 10. I'm pretty damn sure there's a scene later in the series where Peter refers to his fishing mode as his not at all memorable job he had for 2 years. And would make sure to point that out when it comes around. Anyhow, this is just one of those episodes where there's nothing to criticize. By the way, this is the 4th one so far, and we're 38 episodes into the show, meaning there's a 1 in 10 rate of a perfect episode. That's very impressive. Going at the top of the list.
Hey, look everybody, it's Spuds McKenzie.
Another really good episode. Seems like they're making a big comeback after a terrible start to the season. Anyways, this episode is all about Stewie trying to prevent Peter and Lois from having another kid, up until he uses a shrinking robot to go inside of Peter's body, where he meets his unborn brother Bertram, and the two become very good friends. In the end, Lois and Peter decide against having another kid though, so everything went to waste. The only thing I didn't like about this one was the 6-minute plot. Like, surely there would have been easier ways to fill the episode. 6 minutes of unrelated bullshit is usually never a good idea. But I gotta give it to him, this time it was really funny at least. Seeing Peter act like a hyper-autist around Lois' sister Karen was a personal highlight for me this season. It's like if you mix young Sheldon with Stan Smith. I laughed at every scene. On top of that, I love the fact that they're slowly adding more and more impactful stuff to the series. Just last episode, they switched Peter's job, now they're playing around with the closet monkey more, and they introduced Bertram. Bertram is one of my favorite characters in the show in my opinion. He only appears in a handful of episodes, but you know that when you see him on screen, it's usually gonna be awesome. The only other characters that can pull that off are Ernie Chicken and his chicken fights, or Trisha Takanawa. That always leads to good moments. Like seriously, I've never seen Trisha Takanawa used in a bad gag. She's just one of the all-time greats of fictional news reporters. Anyways, a really good episode, but would definitely have been way better without the 6-minute plot going in second.
And as soon as the baby can crawl, it'll probably leave me too. Just like my 8 husbands.
Hey, Carol? It's me, Ted. Listen, I came back because I love you, and, no, I'm just kidding. It's me, Peter.
Chris gets assaulted by a man and helps out putting him in prison, but the man finds out who Chris is and tries to kill him. And as a result, the Griffin family are relocated to the deep south by the FBI, and wacky antics ensue, resulting in the guy who is after Chris being killed. Call me biased, but this is the 2nd episode of Family Guy I ever watched after the boom, and is simultaneously one of the greatest Family Guy episodes of all time. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't end up in the top 10 overall. The plot and the writing is just incredible. This is the funniest episode so far next to A Fish Out of Water. On top of that, the premise for this episode is so cool, and they managed to get the characters into that situation without needing to make up some bullshit or spawning in an imaginary aunt. Okay, well, it did require a 6-minute plot, but I'd allow it considering the guy who broke out of prison doesn't just despawn after the Griffins get relocated. He's a recurring character in the episode, and his death leads to the conclusion. And also, how the hell are you even supposed to get the characters into the Deep South without a 6-minute plot and making something up? Then of course, I just need to add how well paced and written the plot for this episode is. I'm not kidding, I genuinely found myself baffled at the fact that the same team that wrote and created Lethal Weapons and A Thin Light Wine made this. Every character of the main cast gets a unique plotline related to the South. Peter and Brian are total idiots.
Okay, now you.
And also get a job as a sheriff, resulting in the Chris Killer being able to infiltrate the town later without any difficulty. Stewie gets a banjo and starts a banjo band, which I thought was funny as hell. They literally made a song specifically for this plot. Chris falls in love with a local girl named Sam, which he originally thought was a boy. This plot was especially interesting considering Chris tries to win over a girl in the beginning of the episode and can't because he's too awkward to talk to girls. But here, he thinks that Sam is a boy at first, so he finds himself having no problem talking to her later on, which was a neat thing to see and also left me rooting for him. You know, I really think they should do more Chris plots. Seeing him struggle with teenage problems and anxiety and overcoming them is basically a cheat code for a good episode. Then we also have Meg trying to impress her classmates by telling them all about the North, which was really funny in my opinion. It's good seeing them use Meg being an awkward teenage girl for more comedy, and that isn't totally mean-spirited for once. And finally Lois. Okay, well, Lois just sort of does nothing, but I don't care. They didn't think of a good plot for her, so they just didn't write her into the episode. Good solution. It's like every single scene in this episode is either actively working towards that final payoff at the end and establishing the Griffin family into the situation, or just isn't progressing the plot, but too short and too funny to be actually holding it up. Also, we see Mr. Herbert for the first time ever. Cool. Literally every scene of this episode is extremely enjoyable, going at the top of the list, one of the greatest Family Guy episodes ever.
Yeah, too bad you always blow it in the interview.
So, Peter, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Don't say doing your wife. Don't say doing your wife. Don't say doing your wife. Doing your son?
Ryan rapes the race dog owned by Carter Pewterschmidt, resulting in him wanting to disown the lowest branch of the family, which enrages Peter as he was on good terms with Carter at the moment. Even worse, the dog got pregnant. Ryan then tries to get custody of his puppies, which he succeeds in doing after Peter supports him in court. But they're not his puppies, so he doesn't get to keep them. This episode definitely wasn't bad. I did enjoy it, I just thought it was not at all that notable. My favorite part was undoubtedly Peter being on good terms with Carter for once. There's like this 2-minute montage of him trying to get more cultivated and smart at the beginning, but he just fucks everything up. I think they should have revolved the episode around that, with Brian's love only playing second fiddle. But no, Brian goes ahead and derails the episode into only being sort of decent. I'll say it again, Brian is only a good character when he gets shit on by Stewie for being a retard. Always has been true, always will be. He's an arrogant asshole. Worst part is the episode trying to make the viewer feel compassion for him because he wants to be a father but won't be left alone. Which is so incredibly stupid. Gee fucking whiz, I wonder why you're not being left alone. You literally raped a family-owned race dog Peter bet thousands of dollars of poker earnings on, while she was running a race and nearly got Lois' entire branch of the family disowned, as well as ruining Carter's approval for Peter that he has been waiting for 20 years, all because you got a bit horny. I really don't get what people keep seeing in him. He's just such a prick. Giggity. Anyways, even though I hated Brian, I did still somewhat enjoy this episode. Going between the kiss scene around the world and one of my clan, two by sea.
You like that? Huh? You like that? Wah! You just tune this out, don't you? Wah! Well, tune this out! Wah!
Peter takes Chris out to a library to discover his Irish heritage. But there, while looking at a genealogy book, He discovers that he has a brother. He's black. That's actually the plot of the episode. I have no clue why they named it that either. And he joins some black communities, gets reparation money, etc. The plot really isn't all too important here, it's mainly focused on the comedy. Also, Stewie takes over a high school cheerleading team in the meantime, which I thought was funny as well. There's not really a lot to say about this episode. I thought it was one of the funniest so far, but it had no real coherent plot, which I actually don't mind here, considering that it doesn't need to have one. It's just Peter doing one stupid thing after the other, and that's all it needs to be. My only critique here is that they get a little too up their own asses at the end. It's like they try to give the episode this big deep conclusion, but it just boils down to racism bad. But they throw in too many quick gaggy segments to actually filter out what message they wanted to convey, or more specific stuff, for example reparations. So there's this constant message of anti-racism being dangled over your head, but you just cannot quite grasp it. It's sort of weird. I wish they just ended the episode with Peter blowing the money he got from the reparations and deciding he's not black anymore or some other stupid shit. But anyways, it's still not that bad. And finally, off topic, but I feel like a literal caveman discovering fire right now. I've been watching these episodes on a very legal site, and I've just been watching them and recording me watching them with OBS, and just now have I found out that you can literally just download the episodes at the very bottom of the page. 3 seasons in, GG's. Yeah, anyways, going between Death Lives and Mission Impossible.
I don't want to go on a rant here, but America's foreign policy makes about as much sense as Beowulf having sex with Robert Fulton at the First Battle of Antietam. I mean, when a neoconservative defenestrates, it's like Raskolnikov filibuster deoxymonohydroxynate.
The hell does rant mean?
And just like that, we are right back to shit again. Joe competes in the Special Olympics, and by the way, this is a application shot here, which pissed me off so bad. Is it really that difficult to just draw 6 normal flags, for fuck's sake? And wins by using steroids Peter put in his water without his knowledge. Then he becomes an icon, but then Peter exposes him because he was left behind. And there's an ending. Na Family Guy. What a boring ass plot. You know, Joe was never even a good character to begin with. I think the show would have been better if he just was never one. He's a crippled punching bag that's constantly made fun of and cucked by his wife in the later seasons. And here he... well, I don't know what he is, but here he fucking sucks. He's boring. He's just some average Joe Schmo that's not interesting. There's no character traits about him other than he's crippled. Meanwhile, Stewie, Chris and Meg fight over $26. A plot which I liked way more than I was expecting. I really think they should do more plots focusing on the children altogether instead of individually. I like the dynamics here. The problem is that doesn't even really have a conclusion as well. It's just a bit sucky, honestly. Overall, this episode isn't get genuinely fucking upset over the fact that you just spent 22 minutes of your precious time on this earth watching this abomination of an episode that, like the thin white line or lethal weapons, but it sucks. Going between Brian does Hollywood and Mr. Griffin goes to Washington.
Coming up in this half hour, our undercover expose on conveniently placed news reports in television shows. But first, Peter, look out for that skateboard.
Oh wow, our very first Christmas special, and one I was very excited for as well, considering I heard this was one of the best episodes of the show. Anyways, this episode's plot is too all over the place for me to actually describe it without paraphrasing what is actually done on screen. So if you want to understand the things I say about the episode, then go watch it right now, it's pretty good. But that's really all it is though, pretty good. My main problem with this episode is how all over the place the plot is. It's not necessarily a big problem, it just sort of fits the episode, but it gets a bit irritating. Another problem I have with this is the episode is Lois going crazy at the end, and that seems to be some sort of big payoff or big end. But the problem is that the family ruined Christmas apparently, that's why she's so crazy, but it doesn't really make sense because 90% of the stuff that happened here was just unavoidable, like Peter getting some gift stolen by random people at the mall. It's pretty stupid in my opinion. I mean, it's a good episode, but that's really all there is. There's only a bunch of negative things to point out, but overall it's enjoyable. I do not know why it's enjoyable though. Going between Screw the Pooch and the kiss scene around the world. Episode 17, and this episode was one I was easily the most excited to watch this season, considering I've heard it's one of the greatest Family Guy episodes of all time. And by I've heard, I mean, as Mark put it at the top of his ranking list. But is it all that good? Nah. Okay, so basically, Brian gets community service after getting a DUI, where he meets an old lady named Pearl. At first, he thinks she's an old hag, but later he finds out she used to be a big jingle singer back in the day, but was rejected by the public after trying to sing normally. He then introduces her to the world she's missed out on, and at the end of the episode, she's killed off in one of the stupidest possible ways imaginable. They literally have her be run over by a truck, and then she's dying at the hospital, and they try to make some emotional scene out of it, like make rubbing cries for fatal injury was a gag, but if just made as a two-parter, instead of the thin white line. The actually interesting and funny stuff here was Peter and his plotline. Basically, he grows a beard and then some little birds build a nest in there. When I first saw the plotline, I thought it was gonna be the most boring shit imaginable, and that they ran out of plots again, but it ended up being surprisingly heartfelt and entertaining, with Peter growing very emotionally attached to the birds, and then doing some clever gags using the birds as well. If this plotline was its own episode, I really have no doubt in my mind that this could have gone at the top of the list, which is a crazy feat considering we've had two of the greatest Family Guy episodes of all time this season alone. But no, sadly, it's just a little bit lacking in airtime, because they had to make way for the crappy Brian main plot. And what do I think about that main plot? Well, it fucking sucks, to be quite frank. I actually hated it. The first third of the episode is just Brian being lonely and sad and not finding a girlfriend. Fun fact, in the first scene of this episode, Brian dumps a girl on their first date together, middle of the date, because she didn't know the correct pronunciation of a sort of wine. Yeah, gee fucking whiz, you stupid retard, I wonder why you're single. Like, genuinely, who the fuck came up with this? I do not feel any sort of compassion for this character. This season alone, he's raped the race dog, lost his owner thousands of dollars, got his branch of the family nearly entirely disowned, got addicted to drugs and directed a porno. He is a hedonistic asshole. I do not care that he's lonely. He deserves it. Then in the second third of the episode, Pearl is just an old hag, which is genuinely unpleasant to watch. It's just her being rude to Brian. There's not even any jokes. And in the final third, they try to make Pearl and Brian have this deep emotional connection, but that doesn't work either, because like 70% of it is taken up by Brian singing this horrible, like I mean it's subjective, but just horrible song to Pearl. And even though the end was very good, with tugging at my heartstrings, I don't even care anymore. This was such a horrible plot, there's not even a reason for her death to be this sad. The injury that got her there was a gag. The worst part, this is not a good episode, although Peter's plot was in here. Peter's plot carries the thing so ridiculously hard. It's crazy. This episode low-key doesn't deserve the low ranking it got. The Brian plot was so bad, like unenjoyable bad. Going between Mr. Saturday Night and the Wiener is, but let it be known that if the main plot was its own episode, it would have gone near the bottom of the list, and if Peter's plot was its own episode, it would have gone probably at the top of the list.
It's the worst job I've ever had. Well, except for one. Excuse me, would you like to taste my smoked meat log?
Stewie gets a new girlfriend, Olivia. He then promptly breaks up with him, and Stewie goes insane. There's also another side plot about Peter and the family meeting some nudist and Meg falling in love with their son, so the two families become good friends, but Peter and Lois are still weirded out by them. But in the end, they make a sacrifice and all is well. I gotta say, this one peaked around the middle of the episode for me. I loved the Stewie-Olivia dynamic and the nudist jokes were funny as fuck, but at the end it was just sort of lackluster. In the nudist plot, Peter and Lois make a sacrifice, which I usually think is pretty sweet and a good conclusion, but right here, there's literally nothing to it. There's no special spin or twist, they just give off a good impression to this random boy that I can guarantee we are never seeing again. Same for the Stewie and Olivia side plot as well. They make Stewie break up with her and then leave her be for the rest of the episode. The problem here being that they break up like 4 minutes before the end, and the Stewie going insane stuff was incredibly lame and not funny at all. However, I have to add, Brian being rejected from theater school in the first 6 minutes, in the most brutal way possible, makes up for the lackluster end 100,000%. It brought joy to my heart. Overall, I do still believe this was a good episode. A bit boring at the end, but funny to make up for it. going between the kiss scene around the world and a very special Family Guy freaking Christmas.
Jeff, what are you doing here? Look, I'm not supposed to see you.
Your parents invited me.
My parents? But they wouldn't.
Yes, we would.
Oh my God, what are you doing?
We were wrong, Meg. If you like Jeff, we should give him a chance.
Yeah, and we wanted him to feel welcome in our home.
Mom, I need new batteries for my Walkman. Hey, why is everybody else naked?
Lois thinks Peter is too jealous after he gets angry at her for going out to dinner with an old friend. So she suggests that they hire a therapist, which promptly suggests they date other people for the time being, which ends when they discover they both have jealousy problems and get back together. There's also the side plot about Stewie and Brian being glued together. That's it, that's the entire plot. In my opinion, this episode is very similar to the last, starting off decent, peaking hard in the early middle, and then having a pretty bad ending. I actually liked the Lois Peter plot ending, but that was the weaker plot of the episode anyway, so I didn't even really bother. Also, they sort of do this incredibly annoying thing here, where they simply change plots in the middle of the episode. The episode is going from Peter being jealous to them dating other people, in this weird but funny cutaway style sequence. The ending of the Stewie plot was horrible though. Basically, they order a glue in the beginning of the episode, and that glue takes 2 weeks to arrive. And the episode ends with the glue just arriving. That's the end of the plot. They try to make the ending a bit more spectacular by making them save some girl from a well, where they focus too much on doing bad jokes like, there's a guy with big arms tickling a midget. Which I need to add, despite only being ever a few seconds long, that joke confused the actual fuckword of me and left me with a bad impression of the episode in my mind. Because what? This isn't funny, this is manatee level jokes. And this stupid scene leads to the plot finishing incredibly poorly. Like the part where they save the girl from the well is only ever like 10 seconds long. Overall, this was another decent to above average episode, and also the first enjoyable Brian plot we've seen in the series next to Road to Rhode Island. Going between Method to Madness and the kiss scene around the world.
Thank you very much. This next one is for all the ladies out there.
Peter, look, there's Dave and Dottie, the nudists.
Well, hey there, Griffins.
No way, it's them again, right? Anyways, this one sucked. Basically, Stewie goes to the UK to live on Jolly Farm, a TV show. But he gets on the wrong plane instead and goes to the Middle East. God, I am so tempted to make an immigration joke right now. Basically, they escape from the Middle East and go to Europe 13 minutes into the episode. And the episode is called European Road Show. Also, I forgot to mention, but this episode is road to, which means they get to the point 13 minutes into a road to. Just wow. Anyways, once arriving in Europe, they go through a couple of other European countries before they finally arrive in the UK. And Stewie finds out the series is fake. Whoa, what a stupid fucking plot, wow. It takes so long to get into it for that to be the ending. Also, it's horribly paced, but I'll get to that later. Anyways, there's also a super fun side plot. Yippee! Okay, basically, Peter and Lois go to a Kiss concert, and Lois fucks up some of the lyrics at the show, leaving Peter mad at her. But everything is fine because Lois, randomly, without any explanation, just knows one of the band members from before he was famous, and they get invited to make a studio album. What? I do not care for anything in this episode at all. It fucking sucks. Not once has Peter ever even mentioned Kiss in the show. This comes out of nowhere and is not enjoyable at all. How is this relevant to anything, and more importantly, why is this a side plot in a road to? On top of that, this is easily the most unfunny episode yet. This entire episode's humor consists of stupid, dragged-out scenes of dialogue between two characters that read like a talentless writer tried to imitate Smiling Friends. All of this is just so horribly boring. If I had to guess, probably half of the episode consists of dragged-out jokes. There's like a 1-minute scene of a TV interview, Ryan reads Stewie's letter for like a minute, they perform a song for like 3 minutes, and there's a 1.5-minute scene of them arguing with the German tour guide, and nothing makes sense at all. This is the worst road to in the show next to Road to India, it sucked. walking between Brian Wallows and Peter Swallows, and the winner is... Okay, first of all, I want to apologize for the horrible quality of the footage in the background here. For some reason, the very legal site I get my footage from just specifically had this episode in poor quality than all the other ones, so I'm sorry about that. Anyways, this episode was pretty good. Basically, it's just an anthology where they do 3 different plots. In the first one, Peter has no bones. In the second one, the Griffins get superpowers. And in the third, they're all just tiny and adorable. Usually I hate anthologies and I despise the other Family Guy viewer mails they did, but this one was surprisingly strong. I think that's mainly because they used viewer mail, or at least I believe they did, no clue if these are real ideas fans sent them, for this one, and didn't just take scrapped episode ideas and put them into an episode. Or even worse, random event XYZ, but Family Guy. Trust me, you are going to see a lot of those in the future. The writers really got lazy. Yeah, I liked the episode. All 3 concepts were really good and they executed on them well. Going between Peter Griffin, husband, father, brother, and Death Lives.
Hey, Quagmire, watch this.
Hey, kick me!
I know for a fact that nothing is dethroning this until season 10, where another one of my favorite episodes come up.
Look, I'm not gonna...
Do it!
I'm Stan and I was wrong. I'm singing the Stan wrong song. I shouldn't have taken that chance. Now here's my remorseful dance.
Do the kicks! Jazzier!
The season finale to season 3, and oh my god did it hit. Right here we have our very first milestone, that being the 50th episode, and also our very first banned episode. Apparently this episode was banned because of the depiction of the Jews here, but we'll get to that later. Basically, Peter hires a Jewish man to help with their finances, and it turns out he's really smart. So he tries to make Chris Jewish, but fails due to Lois intervening. This is one of the best Family Guy episodes of all time. There's so many things right with it. The I Want to Do song, the humor, the pacing, the one-off character they introduce here, the cutaways, it's all simply perfect. There is nothing to complain about. On top of that, this episode has a distinctly different animation style than the rest of the season. It looks a bit cheaper, crappier, and maybe a bit more like season 1, but it's infinitely more charming. Also, I want to add, I was really surprised by how tame this episode was. Going into this, I was expecting something really edgy, but this was actually very tame. I have no clue why this got blocked. So keep in mind, they control Hollywood. Proof nuke, billions must die, chat alert, chat alert. There's really nothing to say other than this episode is great and you should simply go watch it right after you're done with this video. Going at the top of the list, season-wise, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, overall. This is better than The Boom, one of the greatest Family Guy episodes of all time.
Oh, look how low I've sunk. Taking credit for something a smart Jewish person did.
Oh, that's okay, Peter.
No. People have been doing that for too damn long.
It is the white devil that has propagated, exacerbated, instigated. Line?
It instigated our hatred like a Buick.
Okay, so that is basically my opinion on season 3 and all of its episodes. Personally, I thought for some reason that this season was going to be some big masterpiece, and even though it's not, I still believe it was sort of alright. There was a lot of bullshit in here, for example the thin white line or lethal weapons, which I shit on like 5 times in the video, and also just boring episodes like Mr. Saturday Night or Brian Does Hollywood. But in my opinion, it was all worth watching because of When You Wish Upon a Wine Scene, To Love and Die in Dixie, and The Fish Out of Water. 3 of the best Family Guy episodes ever. Was the season better than season 2? No. Was it better than season 1? It's pretty debatable. So, with all of that having been said, let's move on to the final rankings for the show. That definitely wasn't a sentence splice. Don't check that. Don't check the original video. I meant for the video to end right there. However, before really ending off the video with the true rankings, I want this to have a bit of a conclusion, so I'm going to freestyle a bit of a retrospective on the show and what I watched it. Watching Family Guy non-stop every day, or at least for a few hours a day, was 9 months for me at this point, but I still remember essentially every fucking second. I'll be entirely honest, this video is probably one of the most memorable things I have ever done in my life. And I really want to make it clear that despite me enjoying the project, Family Guy is probably not a very good show. It really fatigued me watching even the first 3 seasons within, I shit you not, a span of a month on vacation, where I had essentially infinite free time. So I guess you can imagine what it would have done to me if I was at like season 15 by now. Those episodes just aren't any desirable to watch. However, I really do have to say that despite this video being very long, being very exhausting for me, I really did enjoy it. The show as a whole isn't it, but I recommend to everybody doing this video that maybe you could do something like this. Not just consume every show you watch, but actually try to make something out of it. Try to recreate an experience out of it that you wouldn't have otherwise. But I'm gonna be entirely honest here. I don't have any idea how to make a good conclusion to a video, and besides, the recordings were 9 months ago, and I essentially just rambled on about Peter the horse is here, so there's not really a lot of room for a philosophical conclusion. So without boring you, let's now truly move on to the final 50 episode ranking of the first 3 seasons. Starting off with the worst of the worst at number 50, The Thin White Line, Lethal Weapons. A hero sits next door. I am Peter, hear me roll. Mr. Griffin goes to Washington. Ready, willing, and disabled. Brian does Hollywood. Mr. Saturday Night. The story on page 1. Brian wallows and Peter swallows. European Roadshow. If I'm dying, I'm lying. Death is a bitch. And the winner is... Holy crap. I never met that man. Brian in love. Forefather. Brian. Portrait of a dog. Damn it, Janet. Screwed the pooch. 1th by clam, 2th by sea. A very special Family Guy freaking Christmas. From method to madness. He's too sexy for his fat. Stuck together, torn apart. Love thy trophy. There's something about Paulie. Mind over murder. Wasted talent. The kiss scene around the world. Death has a shadow. Running mates. Death lives. Family Guy viewer mail number 1. Peter caviar eater. Peter Griffin. Husband, father, brother? The son also draws. Shitty death bang. A picture is worth $1,000. The king is dead. 15 minutes of shame. E Mission Impossible. E Peter Bos Uno. Road to Rhode Island. Let's go to the hop. A fish out of water. To Lavender in Dixie. Da boom. When you wish upon a Weinstein. Please, if you watched so far, subscribe. This took me way too fucking long.
Pretend I'm your child, Lois. Not that.